The Portrait of Shadows. In the late 1800s, in a small foggy town near the coast, a young painter named Samuel Morrow became widely known for his extraordinary art. Samuel was talented, but his fame took a dark turn after he created what would become his most infamous work, The Portrait of Shadows. Samuel was commissioned by an old wealthy widow named Eleanor Hawthorne to paint her portrait. Eleanor was an enigmatic woman who rarely left her mansion on the outskirts of town. She had pale skin, dark eyes that seemed bottomless, and a smile that always seemed to hide a secret. Despite rumors of dark dealings and whispers of her late husband's mysterious death, Samuel accepted the commission. He was eager to capture her haunting beauty on canvas. The process of painting Eleanor's portrait was slow, grueling, and unsettling. Samuel felt his inspiration coming from a strange, almost unnatural place. He worked late into the nights, feeling drawn to the canvas as if some unseen force guided his hand. The more he painted, the more he felt his own energy slipping away, leaving him drained and sleepless. When the portrait was finally complete, it was breathtaking. Eleanor's image was stunningly lifelike, yet there was something unnervingly dark about it. Samuel's friends who visited his studio refused to look at the painting for more than a moment. Some claimed to see shadows moving in the background of the painting, and others said Eleanor's painted eyes seemed to follow them around the room. Strangely, Eleanor never arrived to collect the painting. Days turned to weeks, and when Samuel tried to contact her, he learned she had died suddenly on the very night he completed the portrait. She was found alone in her mansion, her face frozen in terror, her fingers curled as if she'd been reaching for something unseen. With no one to pay for or claim the portrait, Samuel decided to keep it, but he was haunted by the painting. He began to notice strange things happening in his home. The temperature would drop suddenly, especially near the portrait, and he often heard faint whispers when he passed it. He convinced himself that it was all in his head, the result of exhaustion and grief over Eleanor's death. However, as time passed, Samuel became more withdrawn and paranoid. He began losing weight, his hair turned gray, and his once bright eyes became hollow. Friends and family noticed the changes, but whenever they visited, he refused to let anyone near the portrait. Some claimed Samuel was under a curse, that Eleanor's spirit was somehow trapped in the painting, feeding on his life force. One evening, Samuel's sister, Amelia, visited him. Concerned for his well-being, she tried to persuade him to destroy the painting. In a fit of rage, Samuel threw her out of the house, refusing to listen to any talk of destroying his masterpiece. That night, Samuel heard whispers, louder than before, calling his name and begging him to look at the painting. Unable to resist, Samuel approached the portrait. The painted eyes seemed alive, almost pleading. As he gazed into the eyes of Eleanor, he felt himself slipping, as if pulled into another world. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. The last thing Samuel saw was his own terrified reflection in her eyes before everything went dark. The next morning, Amelia returned with the local constable, worried after their argument. They found the house eerily quiet. When they entered Samuel's studio, they were horrified to find him dead on the floor, his face frozen in a look of pure terror. The painting was untouched, but something had changed. Samuel's face was now faintly visible in the shadows of the background, as if his very soul had been captured within the painting. Word spread quickly about the cursed portrait. People who viewed it reported strange nightmares and a sense of unease that lingered for days. The painting eventually ended up in a small local gallery, where it was displayed in a dark corner. But one by one, the gallery workers began experiencing strange occurrences. Objects moving on their own, whispers in the night, and flickering lights. After a few years, the gallery decided to destroy the painting, hoping to end the curse. They tried burning it, but the flames seemed to die whenever they touched the canvas. They attempted to bury it, only for it to reappear mysteriously back in the gallery. The painting seemed indestructible, as if it held an eternal power. The gallery finally sealed it in a hidden room, away from the public eye. But rumors say that on quiet nights, if you listen closely outside the gallery, you can still hear faint whispers, as if the souls trapped within are still calling out, desperate for release. Some even claim to have seen Samuel's pale, terrified face in the shadows of the gallery windows, silently pleading for someone to end his torment. And so, the portrait of Shadows remains, hidden but still very much alive, its cursed energy lingering, waiting, perhaps even for someone foolish enough to bring it back to the light. The mystery of the portrait reawakens years past, and the legend of the portrait of Shadows faded, though it remained hidden in the gallery's secret room. Rumors persisted, however, drawing the attention of an eccentric art collector named Victor Graves. Obsessed with the paranormal and infamous for his morbid collections, Victor became determined to locate this cursed painting. He believed it held the key to understanding life beyond death, and the risk of curses only thrilled him. After months of relentless research, Victor tracked down the small gallery where the painting was hidden. The curator, a frail elderly woman named Agnes, hesitated to let Victor near it, warning him about its dark history. She recounted how her own father, one of the gallery's original curators, had suffered mysterious ailments after working near the painting for years, his health deteriorating until he was driven to madness. Victor, unfazed, offered an extravagant amount of money to borrow the painting, and Agnes, tired and desperate for funds, reluctantly agreed. That night, Victor transported the painting back to his mansion, ignoring the chills he felt even as he unloaded it. Once the painting was hung in his private study, he felt a strange satisfaction, as if he'd uncovered a secret no one else dared to know. In the beginning, Victor merely observed the painting, taking notes and studying the brushstrokes, particularly Eleanor's haunting gaze. But strange things began happening almost immediately. Victor would catch fleeting shadows in his peripheral vision, and he began hearing faint whispers echoing through his mansion. He dismissed these as the result of his own excitement, until one night, when he awoke to find the painting's eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Unable to resist, Victor reached out to touch the painting, feeling an inexplicable pull. Suddenly, his surroundings shifted. He found himself not in his lavish study, but within a dim, cold, shadowy realm. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional whisper. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he saw Samuel, his ghostly form huddled in the corner, his face twisted in agony. Victor tried to speak, but no sound escaped his lips. Samuel's spirit approached Victor, pleading with empty, hollow eyes. "Leave this place. Leave before it consumes you too." Victor tried to scream, but felt his voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. Then, out of the darkness, Eleanor emerged, her once beautiful face now grotesque, twisted by whatever malevolent force lay within the painting. She reached out, her fingers icy and skeletal, grasping at Victor's soul. Suddenly, Victor snapped awake, drenched in sweat, his hands still reaching towards the painting, as if he'd been physically pulled into it. Realizing that the curse was far more dangerous than he'd imagined, he resolved to rid himself of the painting, but the painting wouldn't let him. Every attempt Victor made to remove it failed. When he tried to burn it, the flames extinguished as soon as they touched the canvas. He attempted to lock it away in his cellar, but the next morning, it reappeared in his study, hanging on the wall as if it had never moved. In a final desperate act, Victor hired a priest to perform an exorcism, hoping to rid his home of whatever evil clung to the portrait. During the exorcism, the priest began chanting, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he called upon divine power. But the room grew colder, the lights flickered, and the shadows around the painting seemed to writhe and twist, mocking the priest's prayers. Suddenly the priest screamed and collapsed, clutching his chest. He was rushed to the hospital, but the trauma had left him incoherent, his mind shattered by the encounter. Realizing he was hopelessly trapped, Victor spiraled into madness. His once grand estate became a haunted prison. Friends stopped visiting, fearful of the rumors spreading about eerie sights and sounds around his mansion. Some claimed to have seen Eleanor's ghostly figure standing in the windows at night, her eyes fixed on them with a chilling, otherworldly gaze. In his final days, Victor became reclusive, speaking to no one, not even his servants. The whispers around him grew louder, and he began seeing shadowy figures lurking in every corner of his home. One night, just as Samuel had been drawn to it, Victor felt an overwhelming urge to approach the painting one last time. He gazed into Eleanor's eyes, and as he did, a wave of horror washed over him. For in the dark shadows of the portrait, he saw not only Eleanor and Samuel, but dozens of other faces. Faces twisted in fear, screaming silently, trapped forever. He realized that each person who had been drawn into the painting had left a part of their soul within its cursed frame. Victor tried to look away, but it was too late. His soul was bound, and in his last moments he felt himself slipping, as if drowning in endless darkness. The last thing he saw was his own terrified reflection, merging with the shadows in the background of the painting, joining the other trapped souls for eternity. The legacy continues. Victor's mansion was abandoned after his death, and the painting was never recovered. To this day, locals warn that the house remains haunted. Some who dared to break in reported hearing whispers, feeling inexplicable chills, or even seeing fleeting glimpses of Eleanor's face in the shadows. They say that the cursed painting still resides within the house, and that each who lays eyes upon it risks being bound forever, joining the tormented souls that call out from within the portrait of shadows.